And blessed off. There we go. You guys don't see out there, but we have a really cool countdown to the start of the show. Welcome to Everything Is Attitude. I am thrilled to have Rosemary, of course. How are you, Rosemary?
Look, I co-host this show. Let's not pretend otherwise. Go on, yeah.
Well, we know
Are you telling me you do it without me?
we really know that who the talent is. I mean, I just going to tag along. So,
Oh, I'm the talent.
and we also have Dr. Rich Bernardo, who actually was on my dissertation committee and not my official mentor, but a mentor in a lot of ways to me with my dissertation, but also in life. So I appreciate that he's on. I'll turn it over to you, Rosemary, to introduce a really cool and exciting topic we have for today.
Okay, well, hi everybody. Welcome back to Everything Is Attitude. Hi to my co-host Al Pisano, and I just want to say hi to you, Richard. Richard, whatever you call
Whatever you want to
yourself.
call me.
I'm going to call you Richard because
Okay.
I love that name. So
My mother called me Richard.
I'm going to call you Richard because you just, that's it. That feels good to me. And so, what are we doing here? Oh, yes, I know. Our topic today on Everything Is Attitude is going to be, what is it going to be? It's going to be past lives, I do believe.
Yes.
I know that this is all I know. So I'll tell everybody out there who's listening, I know nothing. This is the first time I've met you, right, Richard? Never talked to you before. Of course, these guys were supposed to call me 15 minutes before the show so we could have a conversation and work out how we were going to do this. However, that didn't happen. Men. I always want to say that, men. Anyway, so we are winging it here, and we're just going to have a really good show. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Richard. Al did call me and say, I've got this great friend, and he wants to talk about past lives, and so I'm curious actually as to why. So I'm going to hand it over to you and just to sort of ask you, why are you here? What are you doing on our show? How can we help you? Or what is it that you would like to talk about? Go.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great honor to meet you. I've seen you many times on television and read a couple of your books, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Very quickly, and I do talk fast and I do talk too much, so I'll try to keep both of those things
if you
short.
talk too much, I'll stop you. Don't
Please
you
stop
worry
me.
about that. You just keep going as much as you want.
I'll begin with saying my father fancied himself to be skilled in some psychic kinds of things. He used to claim he could read palms. He used to claim he could read cards. And I never gave him much. I never really gave him much to work with as far as that was concerned. I thought he was just being silly and didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. Although other people did. As I got older, I became more of an adult. I became very interested in psychic kinds of things, I guess is the best way to put it. Have visited several pretty well-known psychics and so forth. Along the way, I don't exactly know why. I became very interested in past lives. I read the Brian Weiss book 2 or 3 times. I read a couple of other books whose titles I don't remember. And I've fancied myself to try to understand what first of all, whether it was a real phenomenon or not. I have varying opinions on that, depending on the day that you ask me. I just thought that someone like yourself could help me process what I'm thinking about it, and perhaps get other folks to crystallize what they're thinking about it as well.
Well, I know it's a topic that a lot of people are interested in. I'm smiling because you said I have varying views depending on the day that you ask me, and I'm pretty much in the same camp actually, Rich. So I've had lots of experiences that lead me to believe that actually past lives, are real. That we've all had past lives. But then I've had other experiences which lead me to question and lead me to doubt and lead me to wonder now, I mean, it's a very strange topic, and I swing backwards and forwards between. So before I talk about, I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of my experiences. But before I do that, I'm going to ask both of you, but Richard, you in particular first. Have you ever had an experience that might lead you to suppose that past lives are possible?
I was so interested in it that I actually sought out a therapist this was quite a few years ago at the recommendation of a psychic, rather well-known psychic actually. And I went to see this person, and she began to walk me through regression techniques
Oh, okay.
and had me do some minor self-hypnotic regression processes. She wanted me to do them every day so I could kind of get my mind, I'm not sure if that's the right term to use, more nearly used to dropping down, which is my word, not hers. I will say there was one time that was kind of spooky for me when I thought I was running around in a forest as a French soldier, like a Lafayette type of soldier, fighting the British during the
Oh,
Revolution.
be careful now what you say.
I know.
No, go on.
I know.
Okay.
And boy, did that feel real. And then I actually felt as though I was shot, or something had happened to me, and I physically during my self regression, physically not in fall on the floor, but I certainly felt like something had happened to me. There are other ones that are much longer. I had an interesting piece with JFK, but that wasn't a past life. That's another conversation, perhaps. But that's the one that comes to mind most quickly.
So basically, you went to a therapist who taught you how to self-regress.
Yes.
And through this self-regression, you had this experience where you felt you were running through a forest. You were a French soldier, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And you were shot. That was how you felt during this regression.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to come back to it because I have lots of theories. And on any given day, I'll expound a different theory. But anyway, I
have three about this, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay. So Al, have you had any experience of a past life or past life regression? Before you answer, we just want to say hi, Mary Lou. My friend Mary Lou has turned up. She wants to be in on this. This is Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, Mary Lou.
So go ahead, Al. Have you had?
So I have not had any experiences that I remember of past lives. I've had experiences of either flying with an eagle or those kind of things, like being connected or doing things with other beings, but never me.
So you've had. I'm not suggesting that this is accurate, but you've had what might be considered to be an out of body experiences.
Correct, but not lives per se. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But no past life stuff.
No, not that I am aware.
I'm going to tell only just one of my stories right now, which was probably the most profound for me. That when I tell you this story, you're all going to say, everybody out there listening is going to say absolutely that this was a past life experience. So I'm going to do sort of, because you can read this story in, I think it's in The Eagle and the Rose, so I'm not going to go into too many details. Suffice it to say, I had an experience. I was sort of in bed, I was half awake. It was early in the morning. And I started to feel when I have an out of body experience, it's like I feel something inside of me. It's like revving up. So it's almost as if I'm very aware of what is about to happen. Anyway, I'd had this is years ago, and I'd had this experience of revving up, and it's like my body was sort of vibrating to the point where it was really scary. And every time this happened to me, I'd get too scared and I'd say, okay, stop, I'm done. I've had enough. That's it. I'm done. But this particular morning, I sort of started feeling this thing. I'm thinking, oh God, the same reaction. I'm done. And I jump up, I sit up in bed, plump up the pillows. Now you can obviously see I'm now wide awake. Plump up the pillows, look at the clock. It's something like 6:15 in the morning. And I lay back, and then I start to kick myself because I've had this chance so many times and been so afraid to take it. So I say to my guide, Greg, and I'm sitting there, I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if I can get this experience back. But I say to Greg, all right, I'll do it. But don't take me very far. I don't want to go very far. And the next thing, this whole vibrational thing starts up again. It's like, really revving up, and then whoosh. And I find myself at the entrance to a very dark, long tunnel, which is behind me. And I'm at the edge of the tunnel, and I'm looking out, and there's a marketplace. It's a Victorian marketplace. I can tell by the mode of dress. The ladies are wearing their, long dresses and the bonnets and the poke bonnets, all that sort of thing. And there's this incredible, colourful scene. It's like the best movie ever. The colours are brighter. The hustle and bustle. It's just an incredible. And I stand there. I'm stunned. I'm amazed for a minute because I'm thinking, wow, look at this. And either side of this huge marketplace, it's a big open marketplace, and either side are some small shops. So at some point, I have to decide, do I step into it or what? So I step into it, and I start to walk through the marketplace. I'm sort of walking a fairly straight line, and as I come to this person or that person, I'm sort of, excuse me, or I'm, sorry, this sort of thing. I'm talking away to myself, not realizing at first, but then beginning to realize that actually no one can see me. There are all these, I'm going to say hundreds of people, because it's a very large marketplace. There are all these people shopping. They've got the baskets. You can hear the vendors calling. It's a hustle and bustle stuff. And I will tell you, it was the most beautiful Victorian scene. And the only thing that was off about the whole thing was that in Victorian times, I'm actually very interested in the Victorian era, so I know quite a lot about it. In Victorian times, the streets were filthy. The smells were dreadful. There was waste scattered everywhere. People would just dump waste out of the windows, that sort of thing. It was filthy. This was pristine. It was clean as clean could be. And the colours were vibrant, beautiful, vibrant colours. So as I'm walking through, and I'm now halfway through, and I'm sort of looking here, and my mouth is open, I'm so amazed, and I'm just so excited by the whole experience. And I look, and there's a row of shops, and above one of the shops, I see a sign, and it says, Rosemary Edwards, and then in parentheses, lace maker. Now my maiden name is Edwards. So I'm looking at this, Rosemary Edwards, lace maker. Now, I've never made lace in my life, but I knit and I sew and I do all those things. So anyway, all right, so I'm still walking, and I'm starting to wonder, does this connect with me in some way? Am I being shown some experience? Am I being shown a past life? Am I, what's happening here? So now this is all sort of amazing and incredible, and I'm still amazed, and I come to the end of the marketplace, and I find myself at the edge now of the marketplace, and in front of me is a small, what we call in England, a little Humpty back bridge. It's like a little bridge with a parapet with sort of stone walls on either side. And standing on either side of the entrance to the bridge, this is where you'll think I'm really nuts now, because I'm happy to know. I get people think I'm crazy. Okay, so standing on either side of this, on the parapet to the entrance, are these two women. And they're extremely tall, very, very tall, and very slender. They're wearing just plain dark grey dresses to the floor, nothing fancy. And but their hair is sort of like that white blonde and cut really, really short. And I know instantly when I see them that these two are the guardians to the tunnel. They're the guardians to wherever it is I'm going, right? So I'm still walking and I step up onto the bridge. And as I step up onto the bridge, one of these ladies is to my left and the other one comes behind me and stands to my right. And I'm so fascinated still, and I'm so amazed still. And I put my hands on the parapet of the bridge. And I'm looking over and all this beautiful scenery, green hills and small copses, and it's beautiful. And I'm looking out. And so I look at this lady, sort of look up at this lady standing next to me, and I say to her, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I am?" And she smiles at me and she says, "Yes, you're at junction 21 on the A21." And as she says it, she puts her hand over my hand. And I'm so terrified because it's now the very first time that I've actually felt somebody touching me. And believe you me, there was nothing ghostly or wispy about it. Her hand was solid on my hand, solid as solid could be. But it scared me to death. And I said to Grey Eagle, "Help." And the next thing I know, I come back with a force. I'm moving really fast, so fast I can barely feel myself moving. And I find myself back in bed. But I come back with a thump into my body and literally bounce in the bed. And as I look in the bedroom, in the far right corner where the ceiling and the wall meet, there's this absolutely perfect sphere. And it's sort of like a pale grey colour. And inside the sphere is like it's like a whole swarm of bees. And I say that because this is buzzing, this bzzz sound. And all these, but they're not bees, but they're like a swarm of bees. And they're inside this sphere and they're all moving and sort of swarming. And I know straight away that that is the entrance to the tunnel that I just came through. I look at the clock, something like 15 or 20 minutes is gone by, and that's it. Now, I could say, having had that experience, that means that in Victorian times, I was here in a past life and I was a lace maker. Now, you would think now then that I would go hot footing down to the A21, which is the junction to where, when I get on the main highway, it's the junction to where my parents live. It's the junction to Leicestershire. Anybody there in England knows this very well. The scenery is exactly, the small little bridges are exactly the kind of thing that you would get in that area. So was that a past life? Or was it not a past life? Was it an experience that Grey Eagle gave to me to say, these are the kinds of things, these are the ways we can go back in time and we can see these things back in time. But that doesn't, to my way of thinking, it doesn't confirm, because I'm such a skeptical person, it does not confirm to me that I was Rosemary Edwards, the lace maker in Victorian times. But I know that a lot of people would see it that way. What do you got to say to that, guys? What a weird story.
Well, it was a gift of some sort. It was a gift of some sort, wasn't it?
Oh, without a doubt, it was. But
and it may not have been specific that you were Rosemary Edwards, lace maker.
Right.
So much as whatever it archetypically meant to you.
It's the weirdest thing, because, and here is my take, and I'm now going to come back to you and your experience, Richard. When you read most people out there who know about past lives or have been interested in past lives will come across Brian Weiss's book, Many Lives, Many Masters. He's written many books, but let's be clear. But the one that he's most known for and was very famous for is Many Lives, Many Masters. He was taken very seriously because he's I can't remember now if he's a Yale graduate or Harvard graduate. He won't thank me very much for not remembering, but still. And I met him several times, and he's the nicest person. He's very unassuming. He's very quiet. You would never think that this guy would be talking about his experiences. But he, as a psychiatrist, would do exactly what you're talking about, Richard. He would do this regression, right? And he would put people into regression, and then he would record, and people would have, let's say, these experiences, like you did. But I have another explanation for what happens, because being a trance medium and having many years done trance work, when you go into a trance state, and especially with me, I've done rescue work, which is it's not easy to do, but it's necessary sometimes. When I agree, okay, with the spirit world, with Grey Eagle, you can use my body, right, for this. I actually step out of my body. Again, it's the weirdest subject. People are going to think we're really nuts here. You step out of your body and you allow someone else to come in and to use your body and to explain who they are. They talk about their situation. They talk about their circumstances. When you go into regression, it is possible, and it does happen, and this I do know. I can't say it happens every time, but it does happen, that somebody out there might think to themselves, oh, look, there's an empty vessel. I'll have a go at that. I'll use that empty vessel. Because when you go into a trance state, or when you go into a regressive state, you shift, you move out of your body. And it's possible then that you allow somebody else to come in and talk about or show you their experience. So to my mind, being skeptical, it's very possible. I don't doubt that you had that experience. I'm not skeptical about that. But am I skeptical about whether you in a past life were that soldier? There is another explanation, is what I'm saying. And it could be that someone, it might even be someone in your family, who knows, it could be anybody, has seen you as the empty vessel, and they've said, I'm going to pop in here and I'm going to show him who I am. I'm going to tell him who I am. I'm going to show him what happened to me. So I actually remember putting this thought to Brian Weiss one time, and I know that he's talked about it, and I know he's written somewhere, something about my opinion on it. I don't know if that happens every time, or if when people are regressed, it really is their past life. I don't know. I mean, Al, speak, say something.
Well, I would love to actually hear. I know, Rich, you mentioned a couple theories that you thought might be happening. One was a psychological thing. You want to speak to those quickly? Just kind of hear your thoughts on it.
Actually, I'm endorsing what Rosemary's saying, and I'm actually kind of concerned about that in a sense too, because you never know who's going to pop into that open window too that you're given.
This is why we do, people who are sensible and people who take the responsibility of this very seriously, as I do, will say to people, don't do this when you're on your own, please. Have someone who you can trust with you, because when you open the door, and I'll let you talk in a minute, but I just want to say this, because anybody out there listening and thinking that this is a fun thing to do, please don't do it. You wouldn't, in your right mind, no one in their right mind would open their door and let a stranger walk into their house. You just wouldn't do it. At night time, you make sure all of your doors are closed and locked. In other words, there's a safety issue. Now, when you do regression, if if you're doing it with someone, and I have to take issue with the person who showed you how to do it by yourself, because that's naughty. That's a no-no in my book, because it can be dangerous. But when you're doing it, I would say, if you do it with someone who knows what they're doing, please, please, please don't do it on your own, because when you open the door, in other words, when you open yourself up, whether you're doing the Ouija board, whether you're doing, reading your own cards, whatever it is, you're opening yourself up there to those outside influences. And we all know there's a lot going on out there, and not everything is a good thing. So, please, anybody listening, please do not attempt to do this unless you've got someone with you who knows what they're doing, and you make sure there's a safety issue. So, go ahead.
Yeah, that makes very. Excuse me for interrupting you. That makes every bit of sense. I could sense that could be an issue, no question. And I actually left that therapy. I didn't stay with her for very long. Something about it just didn't ring my bell correctly. So I said, I'm out of here, and that was the end of that. It was quite a few years ago. What I do, and this is where it brings me to the theory that Al and I talked about this morning, actually. What I do is I journal every morning, virtually every morning, for every bit of about 30 years. And depending on the day, if everything is quiet and my wife's not up and TV is not blaring, I can go a good 30 minutes with very uninterrupted, quiet time, and pretty much write whatever's flying through my bald brain. And sometimes there's some things fairly profound, and most times it's pretty prosaic. But over the course of the 30 years, quite frankly, there's been a lot of self-analysis going on, and I don't claim to be a therapist in the slightest.
But that's a good thing, right? So
it's almost fun. They say an unexamined life is not worth living. I get that, but what occurred to me, over the course of time, I probably isolated in my mind at least 10 potential past lives. Now, putting them to the side for a moment, assuming that they were or are real, and less and less.
They could be. We're not saying that they're not. They could.
I'm less and less. As time goes on, I less and less think that they are, and I more and more think that they're more likely kind of archetypes of me, of my own personality, which has its pluses and its minuses as anyone else's does, and mine have more extremes of both, as I'm pretty confident in saying with anybody. And so when I think that, for example, I'm trying to think of one person. I won't get into who we think he is, but he's kind of a passive, victimized type of individual. I can recognize that as part of my present Richard, so to speak. Now, does that mean that I'm carrying this guy's luggage around with me for however many years he would, and wherever he might have been, so much as I have somehow conjured, and I use the verb as a verb, a low-level verb. I don't mean to conjure him so much as if I somehow created this individual to represent that part of what I can often be. And I can go through all of these people, in air quotes, and connect them with different parts of how I behave and who I am and how I speak to people and so forth.
And we're different people, sort of, not every day necessarily, but we're different people at different times in our lives. We're different people every time we have different experiences, right? So
yeah,
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think that's, I think it's great that you're able to analyze this and you sort of, walking yourself through this. I am, again, I'm going to say I'm an extremely skeptical person. I do not disregard the fact that there are past lives, and I certainly do not disregard the fact that I have had past lives. It's very possible. However, you may, Richard, have come across this. Certainly you. Let me tell you, I've come across this so many times over the years. I will give you an example. I was in Hong Kong. I was taking consultations, and I had this guy coming, never met him before. He walked in the door. I'm going to say it was at least maybe 6 foot, 6'2", slim build. he came, he sat down next to me, and you know, and usually it's me who does the talking. And I ask people, you know, don't you just tell me what you want, but that's it. Please don't tell. I don't want to hear about your life. I'm going to tell you. You're not going to tell me. But this guy started on, and he's on, and he just wouldn't stop talking. And the first thing he said to me was, he said, "Look," he said, "I've got 12 angels, and they're all around me. Can you see them?" And there is a tendency when you hear someone say that, there's a tendency for me, because I'm skeptical, to think, oh, we've got another one. You know, what am I letting myself in for? But I said, well, actually, and who am I to say that he wdidn't have 12 angels? Who am I to say? But I said to him, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't see them. He said, well, I can't believe that you're psychic and you can't see them, because I can see them and they're all around me and they're always with me. Now, this is some guy who works in a bank. Why does he have 12 angels hanging around him all day, every day? What is that? Is that his massive ego, that he thinks that he's valuable enough, that there are 12 angels got nothing better to do than stay around him? This is going in my head with this. And anyway, so I said, okay then. Well, he carried on, and he said, and he was very into past lives, very into past lives. He told me he'd had however many, can't remember now, however many, at least 10 past lives. And in one of these past lives, he explaining this to me, in one of these past lives, he was a Roman centurion, and he was in a battle, and he fell on the field, and all these soldiers who he was fighting were storming over him and walking over him, which is why to this day, he explained to me, that every life he's ever had since, he's had a bad back, and he has trouble with his back. And it's because he was this Roman centurion. I'm trying really hard not to laugh now, because he's 6'2" and lousy posture. So I'm a common sense person. So eventually I said to him, you need to stop. You're paying me to tell me your life story. You need to stop. Anyway, he didn't stop. And at the end of the session, which was, I think, eventually I did blow him away and made him stop and think a little bit. But I said to him, look, it's not for me to say that you don't have 12 angels around you. However, the reason that you have bad posture, the reason that you have a bad back, is that you've got bad posture. You never exercise. You never do any stretches. You really need to go and see either a chiropractor or a therapist, or go to the gym or something. Do exercises that strengthen your back, and I promise you, your back will be fine. The only reason you've got a bad back is bad posture. It's got nothing to do with those past lives and all those Roman centurions who were supposedly walking all over you. You can see that I'm not sympathetic to this stuff. I have to, but it's very difficult, because you hear of these ridiculous things that people say. And one of my questions about past lives is this: why, when somebody has been something, it's always something special, something amazing. It's, the Queen of Sheba, or again, my skepticism is coming out here. It's always something special. I've never, ever, ever spoken to anybody who in a past life went down the mines, or cleaned the toilets, the public toilets, or was a dinner lady. It's always something, beyond and out there. And so it leads me to be skeptical. But there's this fine line you have to walk, because even though I know that so many people who talk about their past lives, it's their imagination running riot. Maybe they have dull lives and they need to, liven them up a bit. Even though I know that so much of this is not actually real. I think there is a fine line, because I think there are times when it is. So it's, we have to, it's all about our attitude. This show is all about our attitude. We have to have an attitude of common sense. We have to have an attitude of, I reason things out. I try to reason things out. I am naturally a skeptical person. I know there are a lot of people out there who are going to be disappointed because, hey, I'm psychic. I'm supposed to believe in this stuff. People used to talk to me years ago about angels, and there are angels around, and they would ask me my opinion. Well, I would say quite clearly, it's possible, but I've never seen one, so I can't actually say. Then I saw one in my living room. I was blown away. Now I can tell you absolutely, because I've had that experience myself. I have experienced angels. And since then, many times I've experienced angels. But I think we have to help people, and we have to guide people, don't we? We have to help them to, sort of keep their feet on the ground and use common sense.
Rich, you mentioned that too earlier. You said sometimes it sort of fills in a need or a gap, right? That was one of your theories, right? Too.
Yeah, again, that comes from that journaling, and we're talking about that. And the individual from Hong Kong that Rosemary was talking about, I think it kind of dovetails with what I'm driving at. That maybe our minds create this personality, or this personage to explain some part of who they are, or what they're not, or why their back hurts. Right. I was telling Al, actually, I'm almost embarrassed to say now, Weiss has a script in the back of his earlier books about how to regress people. I don't think he's in his present books, but it was in his earlier books.
Who has this?
Brian Weiss, in one of his earlier Many Lives, Many Masters, had actually a couple of different processes you could use. So I used one of these on my brother-in-law, and I was telling Al about it this morning. And turned out he died in a battle. He was a serf, and he was attacking a castle against the oppressive lord, and this kind of thing. He's very articulate about it, and he died with a spear in his back. So come to the end of the story, my brother-in-law has a very bad back, which comes back to the point you make, and comes back to the point too.
So you can, and I am not saying that it's not true. It's so incredible, but I'm not saying the guy in Hong Kong was. I'm not saying that he made it up, but if you've got a bad back, you can't. There's this fine line, Richard, and I'm sure you've investigated this, and so you understand this. There's a fine line. You can spend so much time wondering, investigating, going into your past lives that you're missing the here and now.
Well said. Very well said.
Tell me what do you think about what I've just said?
No, that last sentence rings my bell big time, because because I do a lot of journaling, and I do a fair amount of writing here and there. It actually has begun to what you just said has begun to emerge in some of the things I scribble every morning, and I think I feel pleased that you said that, because it kind of affirms where my mind is evolving towards, and whatever that ends or lands or whatever that means to anybody but myself, I have no idea about. But that last point is well said. Thank you.
Again, I'm not saying that you're.
I get it.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to say to people out there who are listening and who have an interest. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's a fascinating subject. And if you were the Queen of Sheba, or whoever you were in a past life, I get why you would be excited about that. I get why whoever it is that you were, I get that you could be excited about that. And I'm just cautioning people, be very careful that you don't get so involved in who you were and who you might have been that you miss the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
Because for however many past lives people may think or believe that they've had, we're here on this earth here, and we're living this life now. And that's important. And I'm not sure that I could be perfectly wrong, but I'm not sure that delving too far into a past life is going to help you with your life today. What do you think, Richard? Do you think that delving into a past life could help you with your life today? If
Only,
you,
I agree with you. 98% of what you say, what you just said, I totally agree. The only yes, but that I'll leave out there, perhaps, is that if you can figure out whatever the archetypical past life or the actual past life is that you think you perceive, gives you the same kind of message that you just gave, which is to say there's something that you now understand about yourself that you need to act on now as
Right.
yourself.
right.
And I think that's a nice message to take for yourself. If you're trying to grow yourself rather than grow the Roman
It's-
soldier or whoever else you may have thought that you were.
I mean, okay, if we can sort of take it like into the norm, do you have anything to say here? My friend is sitting here; she's very quiet. If you want to interject, Mary Lou,
No,
at
it's
any
very
point.
interesting. I'm enjoying listening.
Right, it's past lives. People can get so involved and so caught up in those past lives. It's a little bit like you're 20 years old and you have a major surgery, and then you have another major surgery. Al knows where I'm coming from here. You have another major surgery, and then you have all this stuff goes on medically. And so there are two women, let's say, they've each gone through the same thing. One woman says, well, that wasn't nice, didn't like it very much, but moving on because I'm not going to let this affect my life. The second woman, and this is all about attitude, and the second woman lives on it for the rest of her life,
Mhm.
and she's still talking about it when she's 70.
Mhm.
I had my surgery and my bad back and so on. She's talking about it, but not using that experience to move her forward and to live a more full life.
Exactly.
If your brother-in-law, and it's very interesting, I really was interested about that story, Richard. Your brother-in-law, he obviously has a bad back. Okay, we can go one of two ways here, can't we? It's somewhere in his subconscious, he's finding a reason for his bad back, and he creates this past life to explain why he has this bad back, or it's real and what he experiences real, and so you can't, I don't think you cannot physically have a bad back from something that happened to you in a past life, because we are new, we are physically a new body, we are physically aware, but it could be that it's destiny. The destiny is that this guy's always, in every life he lives, he's always going to have struggles with his health or struggles with his back. But can it help him to say, okay, let's look at what's going on here, and can I do anything to make my life, to improve my life, so that the next life I live, I've not got the same back problems?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. Very much so.
So, Al, let's have your opinion, and then I'd love, Richard, if you've got more to say. I want to hear whatever you've got to say, because I find I love talking to you about this, because you're coming at it from what I consider to be a real common sense attitude. You've got a really feet on the ground, and you're trying to work it out, and you're trying to figure it out. Whereas so many people just get so involved, and all of a sudden people don't stop listening to them because it's all this crazy stuff. Al, what do you think to all of this so far?
I think first of all, the being a skeptic piece, I think maybe sometimes scares people, that if you're skeptical, that you're not believing what is being said. But skepticism really is just about being objective in questioning things, right? And being objective in looking at different situations. And as far as past lives and learning from those experiences if they exist. I think it's the same thing that we do with being skeptic. You look at these things as this may or may not be. Like we learn from our own human history, you learn from it. You take what you've learned, and if it helps you in this moment, you leverage that. But you don't harp on the past. You don't harp on what's happened. You don't only focus on that. You don't let that guide. If you were meant to be a king, or you were a king in a past life, and you strive to be a person of power in this because of what you learned, that's probably not the right message, right? So it's really looking at what you're experiencing in an objective way, being skeptical, but not dismissing completely, but just using, like you said, logic and common sense. I mean, I think if you do that, and you really are open to what those experiences are, you really can learn from them, whether they're past lives or not. And that can help you. Like Rich, you were saying, I think it can help shape who you are, because maybe it's your soul talking to you. Maybe maybe it is an experience that you've had that you need to learn from or can learn from. But I think the more important thing is to
maybe it is someone else in the spirit world
telling you, yeah.
using your body to recount their life to you and to talk about their life to you. That's, that is also a very strong possibility in my mind. And I know most people don't think about that, but it's very, very easy for people in the spirit world to, it's like you open the door and people can pop in. Excuse me, sorry.
Did you leave the door open, Rosemary?
I left the phone up. Sorry, I forgot to switch the phone up.
Rosemary, and it's important for, I think, people to realize too, the whole universal energy and what this is sort of tapping into. Once you tap into that, right, you don't really know what's coming in, like that front door you were talking about. So it could be a spirit from, you could be connecting like you did, and that Rich, you may have done, Rosemary, you did on that bridge, and maybe you're connecting through some kind of portal in the universe that brings you to that moment. But the universe and connecting to that universal energy can bring you to multiple dimensions, multiple areas, so you're opening yourself to all these things that we don't understand, right? And that's why you really have to be open-minded about it, because you can't make really decisive you can't solidify your thoughts and what's happening when you're not really understanding. Most people are not really understanding.
My daughter.
Well, most people are really not understanding the possibilities or what's out there, right?
Sorry. It's my daughter. They're flying in tomorrow, so it's probably some question that she's got. She's forgotten I'm doing this show today. Sorry, Al. Sorry, Richard. Richard, I'm fascinated. I'd love to know. I'd love to know more about your dad. And stop calling me. I'd love to know more about your dad and what he did. Did you ever sort of? Because you said that he used to do it when you were younger, it was, he did this stuff and you didn't pay any mind to it. But did you ever come to realize that he had a gift?
Truthfully, I don't think I did until after he passed. In truth, he used to kind of trot it out as a kind of a little way to connect with people. My sister had him do it every single time she saw him. My wife, enjoyed it, and they both enjoyed both the palm reading and the card reading. And I just kept waving my hand. I said, "No, you can't do that. You can't do that." And I did go to a psychic. This is way back when he was still alive, and I told him I had gone to a particular psychic, and he was. I remember him being very interested in it. I remember him also saying, and you had mentioned this back several minutes ago, and I have never tried it. I remember him saying once, somebody around us mentioned Ouija boards, and he said to us, my sister and me, "I never want to know that you're ever going to use a Ouija board." So
it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Unless because I've actually done it. I've done it with my students. I've done it with friends from time to time. And I mean, I don't need to do it because I can connect with people in the spirit world without that. But it is a great, thing to show people how it works, especially students, how something like that will work. But you never, again, it's opening the door. You never do anything like that unless you have somebody who you can trust completely, who knows what they're doing, someone like me or someone who you totally trust to, if anything goes wrong or if anything is said that is worrisome. I remember going to a party years ago. It was a neighborhood party, lots of people there. And in one corner of the room, they were doing the Ouija board. And somebody shouted me over, Rosemary, come on over here. And I'm, no, thanks. This was even before I started doing what I do. But I knew it was not for me. But as with, it's like peer pressure. Oh, come on, don't be a party pooper, etc., etc. And I still wouldn't sit down. So one of my neighbours, I'd had at this point, I'd had several miscarriages and lots of surgeries and all of that stuff, and people there didn't know this. It was a sort of, everybody knew everybody's business. It was that kind of a neighbourhood. So one of the women at the table with the Ouija board said, well, I'm going to ask a question for you anyway. And she asked the Ouija board, will Rosemary ever have any babies? And the Ouija board came back, no. And everybody was silent for a minute and then they just moved on. And I remember going home and I remember being extremely disturbed by that for a long time. Little seeds. Little seeds are dangerous, dangerous things. Now, actually, it wasn't accurate because I have a beautiful daughter and a beautiful grandson. But that's beside the point. Little seeds are dangerous things. So you need to be, be really cautious before you start and do those things, because just because you're having that experience doesn't mean it's real. It doesn't mean it's accurate. I know that lots of people don't like me for saying that. People who are mediums themselves, they'll say, when I say be cautious who you go to see, be cautious what you do, they'll say, oh, well, it's, she thinks she's the only one who can do it. That's not true. I'm just trying to be responsible and to tell people to be cautious and to encourage people to be skeptical. Be as skeptical as you want to be, as long as you stay open-minded. Skepticism is a really good, and I think is a really good and a really healthy thing. Richard, what do you think?
Well, I think Al was talking earlier about the words I'm hearing is being balanced and being grounded. And for example, when I teach creativity, different courses, I always say the same thing, the same premise. I always say the same thing when you talk about attitudes, which your broadcast is about. It's possible that a scientist is looking through a microscope right now and seeing the cure for cancer, but not seeing it because he's not looking for what it is that's there.
Right.
And, and so if we use, for want of a better way to typify, if you use too much of the left brain, then you're going to miss a whole hell of a lot of things that are going on out there.
Right.
And at the same time, if you slide too far to the right side of the brain, and think everything is some kind of spirit or this and that, or a sign, or those other things, you probably put yourself in the same kind of place, except on the other side of the street.
Well, either way, you're in a box. Either way, you put yourself in a box, right?
Yes.
I'm curious. I'm going to throw this at you. I don't know if I'm pretty sure you must have thought about this because you say you do journaling.
Yes.
Now, so many people out there, so many people listening will know what I'm talking about when I say, have you ever done what I would call automatic writing?
I'm stammering. Yeah, I think I have.
Now, just to explain to people listening, it is very possible, and people do. I've done it myself. When you have a connection with someone in the spirit world, it could be your father, it could be anybody. You have a connection with someone who you know well, And we're going to be talking about this in our class, in our online courses, about raising your level of consciousness and getting to a point where you can actually make a connection with someone in the spirit world. You might not see them, you might not hear them, but you can feel them. You can sometimes the thoughts that are in your head are thoughts from them,
Yeah.
as opposed to your thoughts. And there are people who sit down, and I might suggest that you try have a go at this one, because I think you would be really excellent at it. Is to see if you can. I don't know if you sort of want to do it with your father. I mean, he obviously had a gift, so he still does have that sensitivity. But whoever it is that you feel inclined to connect with in the spirit world, or you think about, and you just, you sit down. Years ago, they had a table, and a sort of the table moved and sort of twisted and turned, so that you just held. I think they used a ball or something for the pen to sit on, but you don't need all of that. It was called a planchette. It was like a table with a ball, and you could put the pen on it. You held it loosely, and then the spirit world was supposed to move that around. But my idea of automatic writing is for you to sit quietly with whoever it is that you've chosen, somebody you know well, and somebody you know won't harm you, won't cause you any issues, and what have you. Someone who you can trust, and you say, okay, and you get your pen and your pad. I'm afraid computers do not work. iPads do not work. You need a pen or a pencil. I like to use a pencil because it's more free flowing than sometimes pens that get stuck. But with a large pad and a pencil, and you connect with that person that you're trying to connect with, and you listen to the thoughts that you sort of put yourself in a sort of meditation state, but not completely meditative, but in a semi-meditation state. And then you connect with that person, and you're holding the pencil, and you say, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then you'll find that the pen will start to move of its own volition. You'll write things down. Sometimes it's gobbledygook, sometimes you won't understand a word of it, but that's probably because you're not tuned in quite yet to what is going on. But the more you tune in and the more you do it, the clearer the words will become, the clearer the thoughts will become, and the clearer that person will be able to inspire you. And if you've sort of raised your level of consciousness to that great point there, and they inspire you, they're inspiring you, you're feeling this and you're sensing this, you can literally have a conversation with someone. You can hear their thoughts and so on. And I just feel, because you are a creative person, Richard, and and obviously you love to journal. I just thought you might like to have a go at that.
Thank you. The only poem I've ever published came out. I don't know where it came from.
Well, there you are then. So you've done
No
it
idea where it
without
came
knowing. Well, try, you need to, and I would be very interested to see the results of that. And maybe you might like to come back on the show at some time in the future and talk to us about, how that worked out for you.
That'd be
You
fine.
see,
I love that.
do you see how I've, not meaning to by any means, but do you see how I've sort of neatly moved away from past lives, which I didn't mean to do, but I'm now moved into, because I think that something like automatic writing can really help you, and and you're allowing someone in the spirit world to influence you and to help you with your here and now, with your present day. So in my summing up briefly, what we need to do is we need to have an attitude which is, don't assume it's real just because somebody says so. Don't assume that if you've been in a regression, then that it's your life, that your past life. It may be, it may not be. Don't assume anything at all. Take the experience and use the experience, and just please use common sense. And that is the one big ingredient for our recipe for life, is using common sense, keeping your feet on the ground, because whatever experience you may have, whether it's the spirit world, whether it's that universal energy that's out there, whether it's an experience with your neighbor, whoever it is you're having these experiences with, you're going to have a much better understanding of those experiences, and you're going to have a much clearer take on what is happening if you keep your feet on the ground,
Mhm.
you use common sense, and you ask the questions. Now, is that real? How do I feel about that? How does it make me feel? Because when you learn to, you've analyzed yourself, Richard. When you learn to talk to, let's say, talk to yourself, when you learn to listen to the heartbeat of your soul, when you learn to hear the voice of your soul, your questions will come back answered clearly and precisely. And then you'll have some understanding and some grounding of what it is that's out there that you're experiencing. Do we have any comments, Al, at all? Is anybody, or
We,
is
we
everybody totally silent out there?
No, we have a lot of comments. Maybe the most comments we've had, Rich. So kudos to you and Rosemary for making this so interesting. Um, a few people. Lori says her friend's husband's done past life journeys for people for over 30 years. It's pretty cool. Margaret said to look at a past life. Is it to see how you have advanced or where you have come from? What if someone's past lives had adversity and their current life is the same? Could you help someone out of the rut, so to speak? Lori talks about pain, like we were talking about. It says in the past life she was run over by a horse cart. So again, these connections and trying to see if it's real or not. A few people are talking about those sort of things. Let's see other ones here.
I mean, everybody has their own opinion.
Yeah, but Lori also says, I think it was a manifestation of having to pay attention to myself physically more closely. So I think even those who have had those experiences in this form, at least, they're coming back to, like the message that you were saying, be skeptical about things and understand.
Be skeptical, but don't dismiss, right, Richard? Don't dismiss.
Be balanced, and take it, look at it as logically as you can without having the logic bury the point.
Right. Now,
that's great. That's really well said, Rich.
you've been listening, and you've heard Al, you've heard me. You've heard some of the comments that we've had. Can you tell us? What do you get out of this? Maybe you haven't got anything out of it. What did you get out of coming on this show today? I mean, was it worth you coming on? Did you, what?
Well, I come from appreciativeness and gratefulness, first of all. And I think that this is the first opportunity I've taken, and with anyone ever, probably, as far as this particular topic is concerned, to even process it with anyone else and lay it open for other folks to hear and to respond to, and to have you respond to them specifically with your insight and your gifts, and the fact that you had the instinct, right, the justified instinct to be skeptical and to put it in a place where you can sort these things out is something I've instinctively myself have begun to believe the past several years, but needed to have affirmed too, to tell you the truth. So I'm very grateful. I know me. As soon as we hang up, I'll be tossing and turning and probably writing about it tomorrow morning, and then coming back to Al, and maybe somehow getting back to you about some other things that.
Well, yeah, we'd love it. I know that this subject is. I mean, I'm very grateful that you brought it up. When Al first suggested, I got a text saying, "What about the topic of past lives?" And I could feel myself groaning, I have to say, because there's such. We all know. I'm not saying anything that people don't know. There's such nonsense and such rubbish talked about, not just past lives, but this entire subject. But past lives do seem to be, that one of those areas that, because I am so skeptical, do I really want to go there? And do I really want to go there publicly? But of course, I mean, I've written about this stuff, and of course, I'm happy to do it, and and I'm happy to listen to people, to listening to you, listening to your experiences and your whatever you might perceive as a past life experience. I think people get a lot from it. I just, so I'm grateful to you that you brought up this subject. And I know that there's so many people out there who would love to continue this conversation for another hour, which of course we're not going to do. But, to have to, this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in, a lot of people. And we would love, right, Al, to hear other people's opinions. We'd love to hear of other people's experiences. So please, email us info@everythingisattitude.com if you maybe you'd like to come on like Richard and have a go at this, or you have a topic that you'd like to talk about. I just think, I'm so grateful to you, Richard, that you sort of came on, because I know it's a big thing to come on and do this publicly. But I've been fascinated by what you've had to say. I would caution anybody out there. You may totally be convinced, and you may have total reason to be convinced that your past lives are real, and I am not saying that they are not. My caution is, this life is what we're about.
Mhm.
This life now, this present, is what we are about. We can learn from our other experiences, absolutely. But please don't get so involved in the things that happen to you, or the possibility of another life and discovering another life and then another life. Don't get so involved that you miss the now and you miss the present. I told you my story. I've had other, I have lots of stories. I've had other experiences that would lead me to say, yes, this was a past life experience. The story that I related to you, I'm staying open about it. I'm not saying it was a past life, and I'm not saying it wasn't a past life. I find it fascinating, though. And what it does for me is it confirms to me that there is so much out there that we already know, but there is so much more out there that we cannot possibly begin to know or to understand. And that to me is an exciting, exciting thing. So I would very much like to say, Richard, thank you. I'd love to keep going with this conversation, but I know we have to quit. I'd like to say thank you to you for your input. If anybody is out there, remember the recipe for life is keep your feet on the ground, use your common sense, and don't get so wrapped up in the past, whether it's a past life or whether it's past experiences, past pains, past hurts that you've had here. Do not get so wrapped up in the past that you forget that the now, the present, is what is important at this moment in time.
I'm going to send you my poem that I talked about before. That's exactly
Please,
what that's about.
I would love, but what I'd like
6 lines. That's all it is.
what I'd like to see, Richard, is I'd like to see more then. I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to know how you do with your automatic writing. And I'd encourage anybody out there who's listening, to have a go at it. Just have a go. But be skeptical, use common sense. But remember, those in the spirit world, they do have a lot to say to us, and they do have a lot to show us. And so through these poems, we're just connecting with our loved ones in the spirit world through all of this. It's amazing what we can learn just by doing the automatic writing. It's just an absolutely amazing thing to do.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
That's it then. So thank you, Al, and thank you everybody out there for your for all of your messages. We love to have your comments. And I have a feeling, Richard, if you would love to, because I would love to have you back, I have a feeling we shall see you again, maybe even on another topic. and that would be great because you're really good at this. You know, so you know, a lot of people when they're on camera, they tend to freeze up. So you're really good. We've enjoyed having you as a guest. So uh, thank you to you. Thank you to Alan. Until I see you all again, until we see you all next week on Everything is Attitude. Or if you'd like to join us, for our YouTube, Thursday morning YouTube, it's 11 o'clock Standard Eastern Time. Or if you want to know more about our online classes, which you need to be signing up for now so that you don't miss them because they start on March 14th. All of that information. info@everythingisattitude.com if you want to know more about the Everything is Attitude. Al@alpisano.com if you want to know more about this gorgeous creature sitting over there. He's an educator and he's got a lot to say for himself. You do all sorts of things, right, Al? So if you need to know more about him or want to get to know a little bit more about him, you can email him al@alpisano.com. And me. And if you want to connect with me, rosemary@rosemariealtea.com. We'll do our very best to sort you out, to help you with any questions you might have. And until we see you again, you all out there, please, 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 yes, you know, all of you know exactly what I'm going to say. Have a very, 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 and another very